So when there's conflict in my house, usually if it were to manifest itself, let's say in my amazing, beautiful, beloved wife, I'm apt to try one of three things. Number one, try to fix it. Number two, try to fix it. And then number three, maybe run away. I don't know. But usually the top three choices that I seem to choose from are rarely helpful. Maybe that's you that's out there. And so if you're wanting to know how can we be still, how can we be quiet, how can we navigate conflict and issues well, I got great news. You've either stumbled upon the best podcast for this discussion, or you knew it was coming today. And we're so glad to be able to share that with you. You are listening to Westcliffe Climb. I am Pastor Joshua Duffy. And of course, I'm here with my good friend, Dr. Paul Looney. Paul, how are you, brother?
Doing great. I'm so glad that we're tackling this tough conversation,
It's a good
and
one.
I'm excited to see where it will take us.
Well, I'd love for you to just lead off because as I just revealed, I
So,
have I have three options, and two of them are very similar.
well, it turns out that when you're talking with someone who's in a ditch emotionally, who's just in distress, they're in grief, they're in breakdown and anxiety or depression, um, there's a tendency to want, if we care about the person, to want to make it better right away. And if we cannot, we can get overwhelmed by it and get infected with that same level of negativity, or we want to just get away from it altogether.
Mm.
I remember the first time I sat with a depressed man at Jenny C. Ely Hospital in Galveston as a medical student. I was on a psychiatric rotation. And I kid you not, after sitting with that guy for an hour, when I walked out the door of his hospital room, my impulse was to go find a bridge and jump with him. Um, because because he was in such a dark place. I was like, oh my gosh, this is terrible. Um, but with my wife, I love her a lot. I know you love Mallory, and so the last thing I want is for her to be unhappy or in distress. And as you said, my impulse as a guy is to try to fix it. And sometimes that's like, oh no, 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 that's not what I said, or I didn't mean it that way, or it's going to be okay. God's going to come through, like to say something to take away her need to feel her feelings. Well, what I
Mhm.
learned is that men and women are very different in that way, and that men respond to facts, and facts trump their feelings. If you tell them something that's sensible, that counters the flow of their emotion, they're like, "Oh, you're right. I'm an idiot." Like we surrender our feelings in the face of facts. But women are built different, and where men feel more comfortable hanging out in their heads, often women are much more creatures of the heart. And I think it's no mistake that a woman was taken from the man's side near his heart, because women do embody, in some ways, the heart of God so beautifully, the heart of love and nurturing. And for women, feelings actually take precedence over facts. And I think that for me as a man, learning to honor feelings, even if to me they are misguided or
Yeah.
irrelevant or overblown, if I try to dampen them instead of being with them, it doesn't help. It's like what happens with a lot of people when they meet with someone who's just encountered a significant loss. They lost a child, a spouse, a loved one, a beloved pet. And sometimes in our effort to make people feel better, we say stupid things to try to fix it. And oh, God needed another angel, or
Uh,
or just be
right.
just be thankful you have another child, or like, well, I know just how you feel. Anyway, the point is that in a loving relationship, what we have to learn is to be present and peaceful, or at peace, when we're engaging with someone who's suffering, who's struggling, who's anxious or agitated or angry. And there's nowhere that's more difficult than at home with your wife or your child.
You gave a list just then of the most cringeworthy responses of what you could have to someone in the midst of despair. Um, when things are going south in our lives, in our marriages, and our spouse or that other person is in a dark, dark place, I hear you saying it's a little, to me, it feels like a nuanced difference between saying when one person is down, the other one's up, because you're not saying, well, let's just pretend it's all, there's no issue here. There's no problem. So can you kind of tease out a little bit more? What does a person of peace practically look like when a person, you're entering into a room and they're not in a good spot
Oh
from
yeah,
whatever
yeah.
happened in their day? What does that begin to look like?
Right. Yeah. Thank you so much for that distinction about being up. What I mean by saying up, if you imagine a seesaw, um, when one person is down, the seesaw is designed for the other one to be up. If both people are down at the same time, the seesaw broke and somebody got hurt, right? So
Right.
in a marriage or in a relationship with someone that we care about, when they are down, when they're in the ditch emotionally, we have to discipline ourselves to stay steady, even though it's very unsettling. If you're the person that's up on the seesaw, you kind of like, oh, what do I do? Like you don't
Yeah.
have the floor, so to speak. You're giving the floor to the other person and being present with them. You don't jump off the seesaw. You just stay there and let them express and explore what they're feeling. Now, in order to do that, there are a couple of things that are helpful. One is deal with your own unresolved pain or trauma. Because if you've got a lot of unresolved grief that you've never dealt with, it is going to make you so anxious when you're with someone else. If you don't have a story where you've suffered deeply and come out the other side better because of it, it will be so tough for you to believe that God can use this person's dark night of the soul to bring them to a better place. And you'll want to get them out of it. You want to drag them out if you have to. Or if you can't
Wow.
drag them out of it, you want to get away from it because it takes a lot of energy. And you made this point in a prior podcast that it takes more energy to be still than it does to act.
I love what you just said though. I mean, yeah, like it's not only going to take more energy per your point, but it's also going to require us to be present, to be in the moment with that individual, not try to fix that individual. But I hope our listeners caught this, because I think this is fascinating. To me, you just gave us a little checklist. It only has one point on it. And that checklist is this: if I'm listening to someone I deeply love and all I'm feeling is anxiety, that may be the first kind of, like maybe there's some things I need to be thinking through in my own world. I mean, to me, that's a great clue. If I go into my next situation and I can't simply be present with that person in their pain, and my gut reaction and everything in my being is like, make it better right now, say something funny. Well, then I need to know in myself. That's what I'm hearing you saying. We need to know within ourselves that there's an issue there that we haven't dealt with, correct?
Yeah, I totally believe that. And, again, it has to do with our letting God be God for that person and believing that the best way that we can allow a person to move from where they are to where they need to be is to help them get it out. And if you read the book of Job, there are many chapters in which Job and his friends try to process the pain that he's in. But at a certain point late in the book, it says, the words of Job were ended. And that's when, God shows up when we can stop talking. And of course, and his friends also stopped talking. So there's this beautiful holy space where we're dealing with some deep disappointment, some deep regret, or some triggered vulnerability that
Yeah.
that makes us feel threatened in the relationship, and just to be still and to invite that person to process and to do nothing more than what you would do if the person was by a still water, that they could look and see the
Yeah.
reflection. If
Yeah.
you reflect back, that you show on your face that you deeply care about this person and what they're experiencing, and reflect with your mouth that you have some understanding of it by saying something like, so it sounds like you are so angry with me because of the way I responded to you last night, that it felt disrespectful and humiliating to you.
Mm.
Yes. You go, wow, I am so sorry. I hate that what I did made you feel that way. Now notice that contrary to the masculine mind, which is always about, is she right? Is she wrong? The heart of the spirit, the heart of God is not to make us right or wrong in how we're feeling, but but simply to be present and be a calm force in the face of that resignation or despair or fury. And it's tough, especially if the fury is pointed your direction.
Boy, that is so good. Okay, so let's just real quick. We spend most of our time obviously dealing with adults, adult issues, So I would say, typically speaking, if you're a teenager, unless you're like well ahead of the game, you're digging what we're talking about. But I'm curious, as we were having this conversation, how much of this kind of pattern of trying to fix things quickly is something that we start doing with the people we know and love early on in our relationships. And here's the example that hit me while you're talking. Is the standard MO is the person when they're a teenager, they go through a breakup. And what we do as a friend group early on, let's gather around, hear them out, and the sooner we can trash that other person, the sooner we can go out and move on, the better. And as I'm listening to you, and I'm just thinking about like my own experiences in teenage years and everything, is that kind of where maybe we start doing that kind of behavior and going, oh, this works. Same
Well,
back to that, like it.
yeah, sure. We do it with our children. And I experienced it every moment of my childhood, that negative feelings were disavowed. Well, that's not really how you feel, or shut down, like, you hushed your crying, or I'll give you something to cry about,
Right, right.
or don't you sass me, or it's not the end of the world. There are children starving in Asia. Um, Something
Wow, yeah.
to rob me of the right to my feelings. Whereas in a healthy family, you have a parent who sees the kid come in from school and they notice something is amiss. And instead of just letting the kid go off to their room or go out to play or whatever, they say, hey, buddy, are you okay? What's going on? I'm fine. And like, you don't look fine. You look a little sad, or you look angry. And the healthy parent helps the child to name and tame their feelings, to talk them out, to get it out, and to process it in relationship with someone who is not going to try to fix it or make it go away, who's not going to minimize or magnify it, but just be present and say, wow, I bet that really hurt, didn't it? And they're like, yes, and it made me angry. Like, yeah, I can see why. Did you say anything to that person? No. Well, maybe that was the best thing that you could have done. Is there something you would want to say to that person? Just, again, processing to
Right.
the person. You're not going to, even if it's a little child, you resist the urge to fix it and tell them what to do. Like, well, you need to stand up to that kid, or you need to tell your teacher, blah, blah, blah. Like, how do you feel? What do you want to say? How do like, giving your child the ability to claim those feelings, to own them, and to figure out what they want to do with them. Um, and even throwing out some things. Well, I guess you could beat him up, and that might feel good. Do you think that would make him feel better? Or
Right.
like, just like, it's again, that's that calm place that we get to if we have seen God show up in our lives and use the hard things to work His purpose.
So then what you're saying though is that if we grew up in a home where our thoughts and feelings and dealing with something difficult was somehow mitigated or kind of suppressed, then that turns us into one of those adults who has a bunch of unresolved stuff. Now we're a parent, we're uncomfortable with it, or now in our marriage, we're uncomfortable with it. And this is how we just keep passing this on. Is that right?
Yeah. You face the pain or you pass on the pain, you know, deal with it or, you're going to pass it on.
Wow. Okay, so let's go through some of that. I mean, if we have a person right now that's listening to us, okay, we've given them something else that they can hold on to. Man, every time I'm in a tense situation with someone who's down, I'm feeling a lot of anxiety about it. Maybe they can't quite discover why. When it comes to the counseling side, let's say now they're hearing us and they're going, okay, I clearly have something I need to deal with. What 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 do you say, Paul, that process would typically look like to get a person who's now maybe waking up going, "Oh my, like I hate being in uncomfortable situations." What does that start to look like?
Well, for me, one of the most powerful tools is journaling. And it's what David did with his feelings. He wrote them down, he
Mm.
crafted them into poetry and put them to music. But you don't have to go that far, although it might be really cool if you did. He turned his pain into poetry. And that's really what journaling can help us to deal with the reality. Like, this circumstance sucks. My relationship with my wife right now is in the ditch. And so I just scribble down or type it out on the keyboard, like, God, I am so frustrated right now. I Every cell in my body wants to run away and be done with this. I Every time I try to comfort my wife, she pushes me away. Or every time I try to respond to her pain, it's the wrong thing. I can't get it right. I don't know what to do. So, as you journal, what happens is it creates more space in your heart by getting it out, where you can begin to self-reflect a little bit, and you're able to think, like, this is exactly how I felt with my older brother growing up, that no matter what I wanted to do, he always had a better idea. Or no matter, whatever, no matter what I said, he thought it was lame. And with my wife, I now find myself with somebody who tells me no matter how I try to approach an issue that I do it wrong, and I feel so miserable and so hopeless about the situation. So you're just putting yourself in God's presence and being authentic and just like casting your cares on Him and saying, like, God, I don't know what to do. It's clear to me I cannot fix this problem. I need you to show up. Now, that may be where your journaling ends. Like, hasn't resolved anything, but you've cast your cares on God and you've invited Him into the situation. And when you do that and you don't take it back and start trying to control it again, you really do invite him to show up in a way that generates a new and fresh possibility.
Wow. Okay, so let me ask you this. Is there a core emotion or feeling that is central to most people who are uncomfortable being that person of peace present in that moment? And maybe what I'm driving at is is fear. Is fear at the core of it? Or would you identify just one emotion that seems to be kind of at the core for anybody, or is it different for everyone? What would you say is
Yeah, I think that
tends to be the
probably
case?
the two things that I myself experience and that I think a lot of people do are fear or frustration. And when, especially when you feel like someone is falsely accusing you. Let's say
Right, right,
Mallory comes and she is, you care more about your work than you care about me and the kids. Like, every cell in your body is gonna, like, no, you're not feeling anxious. You're feeling angry because you're feeling
right,
like she's accusing you of something that you don't believe is true.
right,
And
right,
so you're crying out against that in what feels like such injustice and such, misguided pain. Like, she's hurting because she believes something that you don't believe.
right,
Now, she has some evidence that has accumulated that you put your work above her and the kids, and in her mind it's begun to add up to the fact that you care more about being a pastor than you care about being a husband.
right.
So so in that situation you may be anxious, but you're also going to be kind of angry because she's seeing you in a light that feels very wrong wrongfully directed and unfair. Like it just feels like you do me wrong to see me this way, and you want to set her straight and to list all the reasons why you, from your point of view, you do choose her above work. And of course, if you get into your frustration and fear, then you're launching that back into the dynamic, and it's combustible. Then things are really going to escalate, and you're adding fuel to the fire, as they say.
Wow. And then to tie in last week, then if this goes far enough, the crocodile brain moves now to the driving force of everything we say and do and think. And before you know it, we have a fight on
Right.
our hands that has nothing to do with the original issue.
Exactly.
So not only is it not better, now it's 3 times worse.
Exactly. So if we go back to the seesaw analogy, if you can learn in your marriage and in other relationships, when someone approaches you and they're down, if you can kind of rein in your impulse to react and just go steady boy, steady boy. It's kind of like, the horse on the trail and there's a rattlesnake at the side, steady boy, just keep walking, like um,
Yeah.
um, if you can stay calm, then you can be present for that person in a way that could be healing. We do couples retreats, my wife and I. We call them One Flesh, and one of the strategies that we teach is this being still in the face of your partner's distress. And many years ago, Beth and Alan Petrich, who are friends of ours, went through the retreat. And when we got to this particular part, she said, we have a rule in our house that only one of us can be crazy at a time. And I thought, that's brilliant. Because you do get, when you flip your lid, when you get triggered, you do get crazy. You see things in a light that is not realistic. It's sometimes very unfair. Um, but if only one of you is crazy at a time, things will go much better.
So I'm the person that's up, right? If I'm the one listening to this right now and I'm the person that's up on the seesaw, what is a reasonable expectation to manage my own health, my own energy level? Let's say I've got a person that's dealing with something that's really, someone loses a spouse or a loved one. That's not like a sitcom. That's not going to be, that is a thing for a lifetime, and dates and memories that are going to come up. Can you speak now to the person that's from that side of it? How would you suggest they best manage? Because this is a marathon, most likely. I would think there's some scenarios, that we could probably point out that are a few hours and it's over, maybe half hour and it's over. But what about something that's kind of long term, and
Sure.
we got to hunker down and be ready for
Yeah.
a long ride?
Well, what's coming to mind for me is the Israelites when they were in Babylon for 70 years. And people love to quote um, Lamentations. I know the plans I have for you. Where is that?
Mhm.
I know the
Think-
plans I have for you, plans for hope and a future, plans to bless you and prosper you. And God is saying that to people who are in bondage, who are in a really bad place with no relief in sight.
Right.
But we can say, um, if it's authentic, we can say to the person, look, I wish I could make this better for you. I wish I could reassure you that tomorrow you'll wake up and you'll feel better. I can't. I don't know how long
Mm,
this
mm.
process is going to go on, but I believe that God reassures us that weeping endures for a night and joy comes in the morning. And how long this night is going to last, I don't know. But I need you to know that I have seen in my own life, and I hope to see in yours, that on the other side of this dark valley is another mountain peak where we see once again the goodness and glory of God.
Wow, that's great. That's great. That's
Something
great.
like that. It doesn't, I mean, you've got to be very careful, and mainly you've got to anchor in your own experience. You cannot preach to the person, tell them how they should feel, what they should believe, but you can testify to the goodness of God in your own life. And and of course I've walked alongside hundreds, probably thousands of people by this point in my career, people who have gone through the worst possible circumstances. I was with someone today who was emotionally, sexually, and physically abused by their father from infancy until uh, 13 years of age. And it's horrifying to think what some people go through. But I've seen over and over and over again, as we come into relationship with God and we have others that we can share authentically with,
Yeah.
we can move beyond that boulder that crushed us on our journey and continue traversing the mountain to where that boulder begins to shrink into the background, and we find ourselves walking without a limp, or with a limp and joy in the limp.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. So a person who's down, you identified a great strategy. Get it out on paper, turn your pain into poetry. Fantastic. Okay. We're up. How do we best take care of ourselves to keep being that person of peace, keeping our energy level where it needs to be? What would that
Well,
look
if
like?
it's a friendship, let's say I'm ticked off at you about something, and I come to you and I'm like, Josh, I'm really mad, and this has actually happened in real life. I approached you with something I was upset about,
Mhm.
and you did a good job of hearing me out and like not getting reactive. But for you to take care of yourself, then you have to be able, once you're alone, to get into your feelings, and you might feel misjudged by me. You might feel blasted or accused or blamed by me in a way that you then need to circle back around and approach me and say, "Hey, Paul, can I talk to you about that issue that came up the other day?" And I was like, "Okay." And you go like, "Well, I really am glad that you told me how upset you were. That really means a lot that you trust me
Mm.
and value our relationship enough. I need you to know that after thinking about it, I really felt misjudged or judged by you. I felt like you misinterpreted my intention. And I just need to share with you my thought process and why I said what I did, not to minimize your pain, but to let you know, like, that was not my heart. And to be seen in that light by you really bothers me because I do value our relationship. So you come back and you hope to reach me at a point where I'm able to go like, oh, thank you, that helps. I'm really sorry. I had no idea that that's what you were dealing with.
Fantastic. Good sir. We're at 28 minutes already, so I want to round it out well. I want to make sure with any closing thoughts that you might have as it relates to hidden manna, any other opportunities that are coming up that are right around the corner for folks to get plugged in. I have a feeling what we covered today, along with quite honestly, the last couple weeks, are major, major issues and ongoing challenges for most married people, especially. I think it's been very, very informative. I keep telling people I get free counseling every single week. So selfishly, I'm in the best position of everyone. I get to ask questions usually for myself. And I'm pleased to hear that a lot of other people are in a lot of the same boat that I'm in, which is cool to learn. So any kind of closing thoughts to put a bow on this?
Absolutely. So, um, marriage, I believe, is God's conspiracy to grow us up by putting us with someone who is going to trigger us in all the best ways and all the worst ways, so that we cannot escape dealing with those deep issues that
Mm.
He deeply wants to root out and heal. And so we should not be surprised when we trigger one another, when we get in the ditch, when we're struggling to connect, because those are the moments where if we can go beyond the surface level conversation and think deeply about what that incident means for us at a deep emotional
Mhm.
level, that's when we can have compassion for one another and find healing as we invite God to shine a light on our hearts.
Amen. Fantastic. Brother Paul, would you mind closing us in a word of prayer?
Love to. God, once again, we turn your way, grateful that we belong to you, grateful that you listen to us in our grief, in our moaning, in our crying, in our groaning, in our anger, and you let us cast our cares on you. and you demonstrate your care for us. You stay peaceful and calm in the face of our distress and allow us to find peace with you. Help us to do that for one another. Help us to be authentic, connected with the heart of those we loved, and connected with your heart so that we can stay calm in the face of distress. Help us to be authentic with our own pain and trust you to give us the ability to navigate it in a way that brings connection in the face of conflict. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. We love you guys so much. We will see you next week.